welcome to episode 4 of the John Shields case. This one we're titling True Grit. He didn't know that, but that's what we've chosen for the title. And the reason will be obvious very shortly. Now this follows up from episode 3 where John had to leave North Lanarkshire's area as the social work department were out to get him, seize his son, and the local MSP tipped him off that the only thing he could do was flee. It's significant that the MSP didn't think that any sort of intervention from her or from the police could save John. Only fleeing the area would do, and that alone tells us a lot about the society in which we currently live. John, you came to Perth and Kinross, to Blairgowrie, with very little preparation time in 2002. Having fled your home, you abandoned your business to protect your son. So there was you and there was Janice and a new town and your son with all of the requirements for care that came with him. So just briefly, how did you make that transition? How did you settle in? What was it like having to restart in a new town under those circumstances?
Well, we knew when we left Glasgow that we were going to have, it would be tough and hard because we were moving into a place we'd never been in the area. We had never even had the opportunity to register John, to actually see what the reaction of the local authorities were going to be. As I said, it was just a gamble that we took, chance that we took, but we had to do something to get away from the situation that we were in. As I said, Blairgowrie, a lovely place, but we've come to love the place. We've been in it a long time now, as I said, so it was the right choice for John, but it was also one that me and my wife Janice had to make, that we thought. We also had Janice's daughter staying with us, and she was a teenager, so we knew we'd need to blend her into schooling up here as well. I says, but for it to take 3 weeks and then decide you've got to get away, it wasn't something that we could sit down and actually plan. I'm going to be honest with you, there wasn't a lot of planning in this. It was just, we had to go. We had to go.
So what I've got here from the files is a lot of information about what happened over the subsequent decade, and the only way really to do it is to go through it on a timeline basis. So this will hop about just a little bit because there's lots of agencies involved and they keep coming up. So there might be a bit about one agency, then after a little bit another piece of the story. But I think going through it in a timeline basis is the clearest way to do it. So we'll start in August 2004. So by this point, you've been in the local authority area, Perth and Kinross Council, been in Blairgowrie for a couple of years, and you're continuing to look after your son. So the first bit I want to highlight from the file is a letter from the Office of the Public Guardian to you. It's saying that they are pleased to advise that the annual account has been completed to the satisfaction of the Public Guardian. So if you could just explain a little bit about how the financial administration of a guardianship is checked and what you go through as a guardian to make sure everything is above board.
Guardianship isn't an easy thing. I've got to be perfectly honest with you. I was against it when I first heard about how they wanted to make guardians for people like my son who can't make decisions for themselves. It's a very difficult situation because you're landed with a legal document, and that legal document states how you must proceed by looking after your son, i.e. what it means is everybody knows John gets benefits, he gets care provision. This has all got to be noted carefully, it's got to be recorded. With the guardianship, you have to face the guardianship people with accounts once every year, and in the accounts they've got to match everything in your outlay that you're spending on your son. As well as that, you have care provision where you've got to run your son's care package on a basis of everything must be recorded to show that everything balances and the money's spent in the right way for John's life. You just have no choice, you've got to do it.
Okay, so this is it's being checked by the Office of Public Guardian there, and everything is in order. And this keeps coming up throughout the file that this is consistently the case. Now, in December 2004, we've got on file a medical report from Moira Bullcraig, clinical assistant. Okay, so this is a medical report about your son John, who's in your care, and you're his welfare guardian as well as financial guardian. So she writes, John continues to attend the medical facility on a full-time basis. Medically, there's little change since the last meeting. His epilepsy is well controlled, and there's no evidence here of epileptic seizure activity. John remains overweight. This is part of his medical condition. It is unlikely that John will lose much weight, but it's important for him not to gain further. He has a good diet. Increased activity will help prevent further gain, but John can be stubborn and lazy, so lots of encouragement is needed. So this is a thing that will come up as the story unfolds. John's weight is one of the few medical problems that he has. She writes, John's health needs are being met and his GP will continue to monitor him in the future from a medical point of view. So that's the position medically. So could you just tell us a little bit more about how John is doing at this point? It's around about 2004.
Well, John settled in pretty well into Blairgowrie. As I said, the monitoring what you're talking about there had to be done. Like my son would just eat if he'd get away with it. And that's how his diet had to be looked after. At that time, we were in transition or trying to get care provision organisations to come on board, take John out and about, just to get him active as the way forward. This is, we were in a new place, new area, new local authority. They had to get to know John just like we had to get to know them to realise exactly what the input for John's care was going to be, which at that time was pretty good. I must admit, there was a day centre in Blairgowrie where he was going to get the opportunity to go, and it was like a few hours a day just to go, but everything seemed to be going well for him at that time.
Now, in 2004 there was a visit by the Mental Welfare Commission to your home, looking at how you're conducting your guardianship. They put a report which we've got on file, and it's worth quoting from that. They say, John receives care at Birch Avenue Day Hospital. He attends 5 days a week from 9:45 till 3. They have a real understanding of John's needs, and although they needed some induction, they have been really responsive to him. Mr. Shields would consider John having periods of respite care at the house attached to Birch Avenue, but at present there are no vacancies. John and Janice have not had one night away in 5 years. Respite is now a major priority. I agreed I would take this up with Perth and Ross Council. Mr. Shields' second main preoccupation is with the impending court case in which he is seeking damages for the alleged abuse of John by workers employed by North Lanarkshire Council and the Church of Scotland. Ms. Craig Mile has represented John and has made the application for substantial legal aid. The case is likely to go on for several days. There have been difficulties in obtaining the relevant records from North Lanarkshire and the Church of Scotland. Mr. Shields also spoke with enthusiasm about his own work as an advocate for PUSH and his participation as a lay assessor for the Care Commission. Mr. Shields receives much support from Janice, who is a care worker in a hostel for people with learning difficulties. A full and careful care package has been arranged for John, who receives a huge amount of loving attention from his partner and his father. So that is extremely positive. It speaks about your commitment both to your son's welfare and to justice, and is quite noticeable as being the very opposite from the mud that was being slung by North Lanarkshire Council, by the Church of Scotland in the Mallard home, and by Glasgow City and anybody else who seemed to be involved before. they were only looking for the bad. Here, people are checking up on you, and you know, a huge amount of loving attention from both you and Janice is what they found. So certainly at that point, that was you were getting support from the Mental Welfare Commission. Before we move on, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, the Mental Welfare Commission are people, that's an organisation that's appointed to look after families, just like myself, to make sure the interests of the adults been met. And really, I have never had any bother with them as such. I say they were involved from 2000 till 2009 in looking after John's needs and interests, plus the fact that what had happened to him while he was in care. Their job was to investigate the abuses that John had suffered in care.
Well, this is what we come to next. We've got a letter here from the 22nd of June 2006 from Jamie Malcolm, Nursing Commissioner, Mental Welfare Commission, to you. And he writes, we continue to seek information about Glasgow City Council's investigation into your complaints, and eventually received a copy of the report from the Care Commission on the 25th of February 2003. We note that although the report itself was comprehensive, Glasgow City Council had suspended any further action, as they were led to believe you would be pursuing legal action on behalf of your son for criminal compensation. We felt the report itself addressed the issues you had raised and did not take any further action. I note that we did not write to you at that time, and for that I must apologise. So you're asking them to investigate, and they're finding a report that we've already looked at in detail, and I've expressed huge concern about its quality. And they're saying, oh no, everything's fine. So although they're quite happy with how you're conducting the care of your son, when it comes to looking into the abuse allegations, they're not in your corner. Is that fair to say?
Well, that's true. The fact was, there was issues concerning their investigation into John which needed questioned, based on the fact that they were meant to went interviewed at the Church of Scotland home. They were meant to go and interview with North Lanarkshire Council. This, I was never ever told what the findings of that were. You know, the mental welfare never ever really came across and told us exactly what they'd been trying to find. And it's only to this day that we discover, like, the Mental Welfare Commission, for who they are, they carried out an investigation for 9 years. And this was taking in all agencies like Perth and Kinross Council, North Lanarkshire Council, Church of Scotland, Police Scotland. These were all agencies that were under investigate, as far as I knew, by the Mental Welfare Commission. But the one damning thing about the Mental Welfare Commission is, like, they never ever wrote the right letters to you. They never told you what their findings were. It came to the stage that I was actually invited to come into the Mental Welfare Commission in Edinburgh, and we were met by head officials of the organisation, and we were sat down, and they just kept telling me they were sorry. They were sorry the way they treated the investigation. They were sorry the way that they dealt with me. And I came to the stage I had to stop and say, stop saying you're sorry. You didn't follow up the investigation. They never, to be honest with you, they never even went and asked to see the boys' local authority files. They never asked for them. Mm. There is no documentation stating that they went to the Mallard, Church of Scotland, and removed documentation to be seen. They never ever done that. So how can you investigate if you don't have documentation?
Now, around about this time, this is a slight aside, but around about this time, you were working as an ambassador for the Scottish Personal Assistant Employers Network. So this is for people who employ care assistants in guardianship roles such as yourself. And you took on Perth and Kinross Council in order to get proper wages for the carers. You insisted on paying the carers £3 an hour more than Perthshire and Ross Council were recommending. It went to court action and you won, and as a result Perthshire and Ross Council had to pay more to the carers. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, when I joined Spain, Scottish Professional, what is it called again?
Scottish Personal
Assistant Employment Network. As I said, I learned a lot of things off of them, and because I'd got a care package for my son, they thought, you know, well, what I knew about how I dealt with it, that it would be good if I could go out and help families do it as well. And so I said, yeah, I would do that. As I said, go out and, you know, help them. I said, so at the same time, when I was getting my son's carers involved, they wanted to pay, at that time, the national wage, which was £5 an hour or some £5 odd an hour, and I said no. I said I wasn't going to ask anybody to come and look after. Like my son, you could be working with my son and he can react and he can hit you. And I didn't think it was right that people were going out and working with people with John where they could get hurt. And I just said, no, I'm not paying that. Because of the care package, I knew I could afford to up the wages myself. But I wanted to do it through the council, who said no, they weren't doing. It was based on the fact that if they'd done it for my son, they would need to do it for everybody else. And that was the reaction I got off of Perthshire and Ross Council. I just said, no, you're not getting away with this. So I contacted Unison and I told them who I was, what I was involved in, and they represent carers and people who work in the public sector, and they thought, well, it's a good idea, go for it. And I know it says it was court proceedings. It didn't go as far as court proceedings because what happened was when Unison got involved, and I didn't learn this till later on, they actually just went and said, okay, we're putting the money up to £8 an hour. And that's how it was done, and that's when carers started working for me, because I was never ever going to pay them that wage.
Okay.
And that's how that came about.
So, I mean, this will become obvious later in the story and in later episodes why this is relevant. But here you are actually taking on the local authority to get more pay for all carers because you value what they're doing and the difficulty and challenges of the job. I think this is just something that should be noted because it does come up later on. Now, swinging round now to the Church of Scotland's Crossreach organisation, who were the managers and operators of the Mallard care home. There's a letter in 2009 from C. McNaught, General and Strategic Manager, Children's Services Crossreach, to you. And he's talking about your ongoing request for clarity and essentially justice. He says that following our conversation last November, your sister called me. She was able to provide me with specific incidents of alleged abuse. As I explained during our various telephone conversations, I have found difficulty in taking your concerns forward because I did not have sufficient detail to start any kind of investigation. I notified the social work department and the police of those allegations and organised a meeting with an officer from the Female and Child Unit, Strathclyde Police and North Lanarkshire Social Work Department to see if those agencies were aware of the allegations and if so, what action had been taken. Although the police were not aware of all the allegations, they had been informed about one of the incidents and social work were aware of all of it. It is my view in relation to the alleged incidents of abuse reported by your sister that they were thoroughly and properly investigated and appropriate action was taken. So he's saying there's no issue, right? He's saying there's a full investigation and everything's fine. And we've been through in detail already why that's not the case. But in brief, we've already demonstrated that the response didn't follow their own child protection procedures and didn't involve medical examination of the injuries. And there was really no follow-up investigation, and the behavioural problems, which were the sign of ongoing abuse, were essentially ignored or as an attempt to explain them away by any other explanation. So it was a very unconvincing performance from Crossreach, but he's saying it was a full, thorough and properly investigated. That's Crossreach view. He said, I've still to reply to the Information Commissioner following correspondence from that office. It is still my position that Crossreach has a duty to protect the identity of third parties included in the recordings that we hold, which are in the form of daily logs. So that's confirming in 2009 that they had daily logs. Right?
Yeah, one of the things that Crossreach is, they never met me. They never asked to meet me direct. They done everything through paperwork. My sister did contact. My sister phoned up Crossreach Church of Scotland, based in Edinburgh, and my sister stays up near Aberdeen, and she wanted to take him down to meet them because she was a church elder, and what had happened to her nephew really annoyed her, the fact that you ever go to a Church of Scotland home where John had suffered these abuses. She wanted answers, so she phones up the head office in Edinburgh and asked for a meeting, and what she was told was, well, we'll give you a meeting, but you'll get 15 minutes. That's all they were going to give her, 15 minutes. So I went like, we're not going to Edinburgh for 15 minutes. Now, to me, this was the head investigation branch for the Church of Scotland to investigate what happened with son. As I said, first of all, they never met me, never met my sister, they never invited us to any of the meeting. The meeting that you're talking about happening in Crossreach, the only reason I got to see that was pushing to get what the report was. But there was nothing there. Even the police investigators, as you stated yourself, I don't know whether you said, well, North Lanarkshire knew a lot more than what the police knew. Now, why then were John's files not given to them? What was the date that they've got for that?
That's February 2009.
Well, 2 years later I go to court to get John's files. The files were always there. Why did Crossreach not share it with Police Scotland then?
Well, they didn't share it with you, that's for sure. The Data Protection Act, he continues, the Data Protection Act is clear on my responsibilities in relation to this. It will be almost impossible to secure the consent of those third parties to the disclosure of the relevant paperwork to you, and without such consent I do not think, having considered Crossreach's duty of confidence towards these parties, it would be appropriate for such disclosure to be made. Now, I just want to say a couple of things on this. Firstly, you're the legal guardian of the person who was abused. You have all the legal powers, responsibilities, as though you were that person. So you have the highest level of right to have access to those files. Point number one. Point number two, the third parties he's referring to are the staff who either committed or didn't notice or certainly didn't prevent the abuse from taking place, who didn't follow correct child protection procedures and who didn't seek medical attention when John was seriously injured. Those are the people he's protecting. And he's using his duty under the Data Protection Act as cover. I would argue he's a much higher duty. Right? He's a much higher duty to you, to your son, and to basic principles such as justice to give you that information. And I find that reprehensible, one of many things from officials who hide behind loopholes to try and conceal the truth. It's all I can't help. I'm very sorry, my hands are tied. You hear it too often. April 2009. Letter from David Moffat, Service Manager, Learning Disabilities Housing Community, Perth and Kinross Council. To you. As you're aware, Anne Robson is a social worker for your son, John. Anne's primary duties are to liaise with John and yourself in order to coordinate and maintain an appropriate community care package for John. Lately, at your request, much of her time has been spent pursuing historical records in respect of John's past care. This has necessitated Anne spending significant amounts of time on tasks which are not within her remit. For the future, could I ask you only to contact Anne when it is about John's immediate care needs, on any issues which might arise with his current care package or on issues in respect to future planning for John's care. So this is Anne Robson, who is helping you find out what had happened to John, and this is Perthshire and Ross Council saying, no, that's not on. We're not having that. We want you to stop. I suspect there's more behind that. Could you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, Anne Robson is one of these women. She was a social worker for John. I've got to take my hat. This woman done everything for John. I mean, she went over and above her title and getting John packages, getting John help, getting John this, getting John that. At the end of the day, when you're looking for documentation, you've got to approach a local authority. So you've got to go through one person, and that one person was Anne. Now Anne would go to her team leader and she would put forward requests for me. That was her job. That is what she's employed to do. But at the same time, her full job title was to make sure that John was getting the best, which he was doing. But one of the incidents with Anne was, Anne put that much help in herself. Like I was discovering this wee social worker. She was working the hours at night, trying to fight to get a care package for the boy, because the local authority in Perth and Ross weren't forthcoming and giving John a care package to meet his needs. That is their rule. The rules are they must meet John's needs. They never met John's needs. They had no entitle. They were not ever going to meet John's needs. Anne Robson, at one stage, we had a meeting with her in Birch Avenue Centre in Scone, and myself, my wife, and there was Anne Robson and our online manager. Now this online manager had actually put so much pressure on this woman not to help me. Not to help me. That she broke down crying in the meeting. She broke down crying. Social worker, and I turned around to my wife and I said, "God, mate, what's wrong with Anne?" And she's sat in there, and I had to go over to her and actually hug her and embrace and say, "You all right?" And she went, "That's just the pressure they're putting on her." This was the local authority putting pressure on her. And it wasn't until when I was dealing with this, I managed to get this documentation that was flying about bullying that was going on in Perth and Kinross Council, and it was making the papers. And social workers were up in arms because a lot of them were getting threatened, they were getting told, you don't do this, you don't. When it came to care packages, they don't want to give money out. That was Perth and Kinross Council. They don't want to give money out to meet anybody's needs. You had to fight for it. When I talk about working for Spain, this is what I come up against. Local authorities who are meant to meet the adults' needs never did. This wee lady, Anne Robson, she was brilliant. But the pressure that was put on her, and in fact, she resigned not long after that. She gave up. She'd had enough.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen this in other Highland Council were particularly in the press recently as well because of culture of bullying within the organisations. It doesn't seem to be rare. Still in 2009, September 2009, we're back to the Mental Welfare Commission. Susan Tate, nursing officer, Mental Welfare Commission, wrote to you. Said, following discussion with Dr. Lyons, Mental Welfare Commission Director, the Commission does not intend carrying out any further investigations. We continue to be content that in the case of John Shields Senior, the Commission's position of choosing to scrutinise the investigation of other bodies without carrying out its own full investigation was an appropriate course of action. We will be likely in contact in the future regarding the guardianship of your son, but this will be out with the realms of any investigation. So that's quite clear. They've not investigated, Mental Welfare Commission. You've alleged that your son was raped in the Mallard. You've got two clinical psychologists saying that is the most likely explanation for his behavioural problems. And the Mental Welfare Commission is saying, we didn't investigate, we're happy that we didn't investigate, and we have no intention of investigating. Yeah. I find that quite shocking. I mean, how did you react?
Well, I was the same. When they told me, I never expected anything different. Up to this day, as you know, I've been on the phone and accused them of the cover-up of abusing my son, which is a serious issue to take up with any organisation. But the Mental Welfare Commission haven't had even the decency to answer me. They've had 2 letters sent, they've had calls recorded, and yet the head of the Mental Welfare Commission hasn't even had the decency to call me back. But the reason being, they were involved for 9 years, as I says to you. He's just explained there. They never went and asked organisations anything. So they never went to the Mallard. They never went to Church of Scotland. They never went to Social Work Department. Yeah. They never went to anybody. All they done was sit there and listen to the arguments that I was given and then come up with an answer to shut me up. That is what the mental welfare did. It was the same. We had the Care Commission, contacted the Care Commission to get them involved. They went and discovered documentation that the mental welfare never brought. It was the report from Glasgow City Council into the investigation of John. I didn't get that from them. I had to go, first of all, the Mental Welfare Commission, they knew none. I had to go to the Care Commission, who investigate as well. And I had to go through them and use freedom of information just to find out what happened in an investigation with Glasgow District Council, Social Work Department, into what happened at the Mallard. So the report about the man who was abusing children in there, who was taken out and sent away to work in another home, was hidden from everybody. And if it wasn't for a fact of pressure, the Care Commission using the guardianship that I had, that I was going to bring them, I would never have known that this man had been assaulting children. I would never have known that. They kept it. The Mental Welfare Commission, I've actually says to yourself, David, what did they get paid for? What exactly are these people getting mega bucks for? But then you can understand why when they contacted me and brought me into Edinburgh, that I'm sitting in an office, big fancy office, sitting in an office with a board in front of me, and they turn around and they say, we're sorry for the way we've treated you. We're sorry for this, we're sorry for that. Jamie Malcolm, he stood up and he was like so apologetic for what he didn't do, that he turns in, as I said, and he just gave up. He just couldn't look at me anymore. And I had to shut him up and say, will you stop saying you're sorry? Sorry for what? Covering up my son's abuse? You're sorry for that? To which that was the end of it. Then they didn't do it. They done nothing.
So also in 2009, the guardianship came up for renewal again. The guardianship orders only last a set period. So 11 September, Sheriff Fletcher, quote, having considered the application and productions and having heard parties thereon, renews the appointment of John Stuart Shields as guardian to John William Shields for a period of 20 years from this date, in terms of Part 6 of the Adult with Incapacity Scotland Act 2000, conferring on him the powers in relation to the adult's personal welfare, property and financial affairs, and in particular, conferring on him the power to, and there's a huge long list. It's item A to item W. Right? I'll just read one or two out. You have the power to decide what care and accommodation may be appropriate for the adult in liaising with the local authority. Make decisions concerning the adult's involvement in education, training, work, holidays, cultural and social activities. Exercise any rights of access which the adult has in relation to personal data or records, which means you have all the rights to all the information that are being concealed from you by the Church of Scotland based on data protection. Take any legal action on behalf of the adult involving personal welfare. Right? So you, in legal terms, are John. Right? You exercise all the powers on his behalf. You must operate in his best interest, but apart from that, there's no other real constraint on you. You have all the powers, legal powers, that he would have were he in a different condition. So, and that lasts for 20 years. 20 years is unusual, isn't it?
It was given to me because through all the time that I've looked after John since I moved him for care, there's never been any problems. It's not until you start bringing local authorities in, and when I started with the care provision, bringing people into my home, you know, like being a guardian, you know, it's got its good bits and its bad bits. You know, the power that you get, it's amazing the amount of power you get being a nobody can turn around and say no to you. But then again, it can be used in a bad way as well. You know, I was accused by my daughter, I've been accused by my ex-wife of overusing it, using the power that I had to do things for John that they weren't happy about, which was a load of rubbish, because they were always brought in and taking John forward and what was good for John's needs. The stuff about getting the files, getting the documentation, that was the problem that we had. You know, when you look at the actions of the Mental Welfare Commission, they knew that the power you had as a guardian. I could go with court proceedings anytime. I wanted to do that. I wanted to bring them in and just find out exactly what the hell they'd been up to. As I said, and it was the same with Perth and Kinross Council. When we took Perth and Kinross on board with the guardianship, as I said, using that to get carers to come in and work with me, you know, that's the hard bit of being a guardian, looking after somebody like John. When they want you to bring provision in to help you with your son, but at the same time, you've got to live with people in your house. You know, you've got carers that come in, and when Perth and Kinross themselves agreed and everything, I got a package. It took a lot of fighting and we got it. We got a package where I had carers in for 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night. 5 days a week. At the weekend, John was just with me, as I said. So you're living in a house where carers are walking about with your son, living with your son, and it's a very difficult thing to meet, you know, find a middle ground on it. You know, you get people walking about, you want to go to your bed, you get changed and all that. You can't just walk about, it's because you've got carers in your house. Yeah. And at that time it was 2 carers every
your house
shift.
Yeah, your house becomes a place of business.
That's what this is.
And that's very difficult because it's not home anymore. It's very difficult. Yeah.
And then when you've got carers coming in your house every 5 days a week, 52 weeks of the year, it is really, really hard going. And being a guardian and being a father, although this provision is there for John, they don't think of the pressure that's put on the parents.
Now, just before we leave the issue of that guardianship order, it runs until 2029.
Yeah.
11th September 2029, which obviously it's still in effect. Now, we've tried hard to find out if it's ever been rescinded. There is no paperwork that we can discover that says it's been rescinded. We've sought other paperwork that says someone else has been given a similar order. There's no other paperwork that we can locate. So it would appear that legally, in terms of the paperwork, you still are the guardian, but it's not been operated in that way, and we'll get to that in later episodes. For a moment, back to the Mental Welfare Commission, because you got your correspondence with them was going on and on and on. 11th November 2009, Dr. Donald Lyons, Director, Mental Welfare Commission. So you're going up the tree, you're now communicating with the Director. Mrs. Tate has passed copies of your recent correspondence to me, he writes. I believe that you're in possession of all the information that we have about the way your concerns and complaints about your son's care was investigated. I can also confirm to you that we will not be investigating this matter further, but we are planning to visit your son to ensure his present and future care and treatment is of a high quality and meets with the principles of the Adults with Incapacity legislation. So they're going to come and check up on you, but they're not going to investigate the abuse. That's his position.
Yeah, well, this Dr. Lyons, the funny thing about it is they come and check up on me. You never ever did.
Oh, okay. Right, okay.
I never seen the mental welfare officer after that.
Oh,
Right, because Jamie Malcolm was the only one that we dealt with. There never ever was anybody else came on board.
okay.
You know, so he's actually talking a lot of rubbish. You know, I never ever met the man. I don't even know if he was there the day I was in the place. But what they were doing was they were washing their hands of any sort of investigation. They didn't want part of it. They didn't want anything to do with it because they knew deep down there was something wrong. You know, he talks about, you know, an investigation. I go back to what I said to you earlier on. Not once. You know, you've got police stating files had been destroyed. Not once in 2009 when they finished with me had they ever wrote to me and said, we examined John's files. Not once did the Mental Welfare Commission say that. I've went through their dialogue with me and I cannot find it stated once. As I said, so it's a joke for them to say that I would be getting investigated on a yearly basis. I was never investigated after that. I never met another mental welfare officer.
So, Perthshire and Ross Council, though, were checking up on you on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So we've got here 14th of June 2010, PKC, Housing and Community Care, record of supervision, guardianship made by Helen Winter. Date of guardianship approval, 11 September 2009. Renewal date, 11 September 2029. Their documentation. Right, so it's worth me just quoting this reasonably in full because this is Perthshire and Ross Council's view of how you're doing as a guardian. Nature of disability. John has a rare chromosomal disorder which has resulted in his disability. John has not verbal communication and often becomes frustrated by this, which can result in John being challenging towards those who support him. John lives with his father and his partner in the family home in Blairgowrie. The family moved to this area from North Lanarkshire. Mr. Shields employs 3 personal assistants to provide support for John while he and his partner provide the care John needs at other times. John has made progress but is still unable to make decisions for himself. He's dependent on others for care and support he needs to live in the community. John appears to be happy and relaxed when with his father and his partner or his personal assistants. It is clear to see when John is upset, as he can refuse to move or lash out at those supporting him. Mr. Shields has gone to great lengths to find out more about John's disability so that he can better understand his needs. When necessary, John accesses his GP with support from his father. There are no major health issues at present. Mr. Shields manages all the financial affairs for John. He currently manages the employment of 3 personal assistants, which is funded through direct payments. Mr. Shields also ensures that John has money with him to spend when engaging in community activities. John shows no awareness or interest in finances. Mr. Shields makes all decisions based on what is best for John. The issues around John visiting his mother were that on his return he was often extremely tired and very agitated. Knowing that John coped best with a known routine, Mr. Shields asked for the visits to be standard length rather than varying from one visit to the next. Although reluctant to commit to this, John's mother eventually agreed, and since that time John's visits have been better. He is now enthusiastic when he knows he's going to visit and happy and relaxed on his return. So this is a very glowing report, right? That you are managing a situation which a social worker accepts is challenging and difficult. And you're doing it very well and you're operating in the best interests of your son. This is Perthshire and Ross. This is their assessment this is 2010, this particular one. Back to the Mental Welfare Commission. You wrote to them, to Dr. Lyons, about information which they had withheld. He said, you write, I've now thought about what we discussed during a conversation on Friday 3rd September 2010 concerning the meeting between the mental welfare officials and representatives of North Lanarkshire Council at Carlton House, Cumbernauld, on the 4th of April 2000, which was instigated by myself concerning my son's care while being looked after by North Lanarkshire Council. I can understand your argument about me not being my son's guardian in law at that time, but to hold this information from me for nearly 11 years is unforgivable. So you'd found out that they had information which they'd just concealed from you.
Yeah.
Despite you being then guardian, legal guardian, they just had hidden it. How did this come to light?
That's the report. As I said, they tried to state that there was no documents, there was nothing. As I said, when we went through the Care Commission told me, well, the report's with the Mental Welfare Commission. They had the report all the time. And that's the report that was done by, as I say, Glasgow City Council. You know, you get three agencies, you get Glasgow, you've got the Mental Welfare Commission, you get the Care Commission, and they're all sharing dialogue concerning my son and what happened in this home. But none of them would ever turn around and say, okay, we'll give you this, we'll show you this. So you're fighting with them. And then, as I says, it was the Care Commission that told me that the Mental Welfare Commission were holding documentation from me. And that's why I took it up with this chap, Lyons, as I said. And then what happened? Up pops a wee report that's been missing for nearly 10 years as I speak here. And that came to me, and that was the report stating about the predator that was in this home at the time.
Okay. So the point is here, you're continuing this very long, lonely fight to find out what the truth is.
Yeah.
This includes going after North Lanarkshire. So 6th of April 2011 we're now into. The Sheriffdom of South Strathclyde, Dumfries and Galloway at Hamilton Court answers for the defender in cause. John Stuart Shields, the pursuer, against the North Lanarkshire Council, the defender, right? So you've taken them to court for information. They respond, admitted the date of birth of John William Shields is 25th August 1983, and he was received into care by the defender on the 2nd of November 1999. That's actually wrong. It was 1995. He was released from their care in 1999, but hey, there we go. Admitted the defender has a duty to retain all documentation pertaining to the said period of care until the said John William Shields attains the age of 75 years by virtue of the arrangements to look after children Scotland Regulations 1996. So they confirm they have a duty to keep basically everything. Under explanation that the defender has retained all documentation that it produced or received in respect of said John William Shields. Admitted the pursuer, that is you, is entitled in his capacity as guardian to sight of the documentation held by the defender in connection with the said John William Shields and his care. So here we've got in court North Lanarkshire Council admitting that you have a right to all the documentations. But there still is a situation where Crossreach and the Church of Scotland are saying, oh, data protection, you don't get to see anything.
Yeah. Well, this action was brought, this action was coming. They knew that. And when it did come along, strange thing about it was, like, when this court proceeding came along and legal aid was getting done, both the Church of Scotland and North Lanarkshire Council both objected to me getting legal aid to go to court with them.
Oh,
now that gave me the sign to say, oh, they're trying to keep something away from me.
Yeah.
But it was never ever going to happen, because being a guardian and being responsible for John allows me to raise court actions against anybody. You know, this is the one thing about this guardianship, which isn't as good and it's no good, but it does give you a lot of power. But I done it, And then when we went to take on North Lanarkshire at Hamilton, as I said, there was no way on earth did they want to give us anything. Even though I won that, and they were ordered to hand over John's documentation, North Lanarkshire never did it. They never handed over anything. What eventually happened was they tried to give me a document called RIC3, which is a reception into care document. And me and my wife got them, we sat there and I said, there's no writing in them. There's nothing in it. And they tried to say this was John's legal documents. And I knew it wasn't. I knew they were keeping his day-to-day documents somewhere. They never ever gave that to me. And another thing was, they would have had to have put it through the court for the court to give to me. But it's only came now that I've been told that this interlocutor should have been used. I should have taken this document to Police Scotland and told them to get into North Lanarkshire Council for withholding documentation from me. That is what they done. They kept John's file, his main files, away from me. Even though the court ordered them to hand it over, they didn't.
Okay. So, now we'll go back to Perth and Kinross Council, because you talked about one of the social workers who was excellent, who was eventually so bullied she had to leave the employment of Perth and Kinross Council. You had another social worker then, Helen Winter, who was also very good, but she was reassigned. So 9th of May 2011, Jamie Kirby, team leader, Housing and Community Care, Perth and Kinross Council, letter to you. I thank you for your letter dated 14th of April. I'm sorry for the delay in responding to you. Unfortunately, your letter was not addressed to a specific person and it took some time to reach me. I discussed your request for Helen Winter to be your son's social worker with my service manager, Paul Henderson. However, as part of our aim to move services closer to the communities, we have now moved to a locality model. As such, Helen covers Perth City and does not operate, there's a typo in there somewhere, does not operate presumably, in the Blairgowrie area. This locality model enables less travel for social workers, increased opportunities for community capacity building, and most importantly, the potential for higher levels of service user contact. I'm delighted you've been pleased with the support you've received from Helen. I would like to give you my confidence that your local social worker, Gillian Morrison, will provide a similar level of support to you and your son. As part of her statutory duties under the Adults with Incapacity Act, Gillian will need to supervise your private guardianship arrangements for your son, and I will ask her to make contact with you at a suitable time to carry out this responsibility. So, your excellent social worker, I'm right in saying you were very happy. Is that a correct statement? You were very happy with Helen?
Yeah, it was a social worker who had time for John. You know, everything that she done wasn't based on giving me practice. It was for John. She only had John's interest as best at heart. And that's hard to get in a social worker.
So we see here officialdom being officialdom. Right? We've made a high level decision that we're going to have things organised in this particular way. So the human aspects and the fact that you've got a relationship that's working isn't allowed to stand in the way of, no, we're organising this way and that's it.
Well, see,
there's no flexibility there.
There was things that Helen done that normal social workers never ever thought about. Like John, John every year had holidays. He was away, he had a better life at MDNO. He was away sometimes 2 and 3 holidays a year. And we had we got a big care package to use, and it was getting used correctly, as you stated earlier on correctly, that everything has got to be taken back to the local authorities. Every month I've got to put reports in, details showing John's money's been spent. And I think what happened with Helen was, we were spending a lot of money and John's holidays. And up came a great idea where John used to love a place, Aviemore. He used to go there with me for years and years. We used to attend, and up there they've got timeshares. And me and Helen sat one day and I said, why don't we look into buying John his own timeshare? I says, the money that the local authority are using, spending holidays for him, I says, I'm sure we could get him a good package, a good timeshare, which means anything happened to me, he's got a place to be going on holiday every year. I says, with his care team, wherever he's staying, whatever, at least he's got something paid for by the local authority, overseen by the local authority. And Helen Winters, she went like that, she says, yeah, brilliant. She backed it, she sanctioned it and everything. And it wasn't until Helen went that I realised the local authority didn't want this. And when the problems that arise later on, that we'll probably talk about, they actually wanted to get rid of this care package, the timeshare for John. The local authority didn't want it. Helen done it in a way that made it look as though it was money well spent. And that was the thing about her, that she was doing this. When Gillian Morrison appeared and she came into the house, made herself known to us, and I was like that, you know, she was trying to put over what she was going to do. And part of that was going to be the finance spent on John, wasn't going to be what we were doing. I could see that for just going in. And then there was just an attitude that came for her, that she was going to do what she wanted to do. And that wasn't good enough, and I objected to her. I didn't really, no object, I just said, I didn't want you here.
Right, okay. So unfortunately, you've had two excellent social workers from Perth and Ross Council. One couldn't take the bullying and quit. One was reassigned, and then you were left with someone that you didn't have a rapport with and didn't like the attitude that was being shown. So it was at this time that a box arrived in the mail containing a large pile of paperwork. Tell us about that.
What happened was that this is coming from whatever happened in this court in Hamilton. And one day, postman arrives, this box arrives, and I'm like, who's that for? And he says, it's got your name on it. I didn't have an address where it was sent from. And I says, I wonder what's in here. So got Blade, opened it up, emptied it upside down, and here was all these reports just flooded out of the box all over the floor. And these were actually, believe it or not, these were John's day-to-day reports of when he was in care.
And this just arrived. No, there was no covering letter.
Nothing.
You don't know who it came from.
No idea where it came from. There was nothing in the box. There was nothing in the files. Usually, at first I thought this was come through the courts. But then I says, no, if it came through the courts, the court details would be on it, saying it's been served on you. But it wasn't, and then there was no forwarding address if it didn't even get to me. As I said, but the box, it says there was nothing. And when we emptied it out, seen what it was, and I says to Janice, my partner at the time, I said, look, we're going to have to put all this together and see what the hell it is. And as I says to you there and now, this was John's care. This was the file that nobody wanted me to get. Mm-hmm. Police have stated it being destroyed. Church of Scotland saying it doesn't exist. There we've got the mental welfare, didn't want to read it. The Care Commission didn't want to read it. And this was it, lying in my house. We put it together, put it into a folder, sat there and read it, and I was disgusted. Absolutely disgusted. I didn't know half the stuff that my son had went through.
So you received all of this information. So this is after you've been chasing this through correspondence, legal action, applying to a wide range of state agencies, and you've been told no, you're not getting the records, we don't have the records, we've destroyed the records, we haven't got the records, you're not entitled to the records. You got all of this has happened, and then a box arrives with all of the records, the full care logs, the the logs of all the injuries, everything in it, and out of the blue. So what did the authorities, the various authorities, say when you had this? I mean, how did they respond to this information showing up? Did they respond positively at all?
No, if I was going to be honest with you, I would tell you, I never told them I had the files. I never told them. I says, okay, we're going to play games here. We're still going to see if you're going to lie about this. They must have known that I had been to court. They must have known that I had beat North Lanarkshire Council, because North Lanarkshire and Perth and Kinross were sharing information all the time. So I says, okay, we'll not tell them we'll go to file, but what we will do is we'll go as far as accusing Perth and Kinross Council, known what these files were, known that these files existed. We wanted it out of them that they knew the files existed. This was the problem, and it took a few meetings till we had a major one in Perth where we sat, and there was representation all the way around the table, family, government, social work, are all sitting around the table, and I think it was Janice, my partner, actually turned around to the head bummer for Perth and Kinross Council and says, where do you've seen these files? You know exactly what we're talking about, what we've been trying to get and access. You know exactly where these files existed and where it was. And he actually turned around and admitted that he had them in his presence. He had them in a cupboard, locked up, and we went like, so you've actually filed these are the files that you've turned around so it doesn't exist, never been seen, but you've had them all the time. And then the meeting was stopped, and I think what happened, as soon as he actually confided in us that he had seen these reports, that the meeting was just brought to an abrupt halt, stopped, and then the outcome was for me to write down questions, a list of questions for Perth and Kinross Council to answer to me, and then we'd have a meeting again. Now the funny thing was, I'd done eight questions for Perth and Kinross Council about the files, about the cover-ups, everything that went on, John's care, you name it, everything was this. Part of the problems I had with this local authority was because of the cover-up concerning John's files. And eventually I sent out 8 questions to Perth and Kinross Council to answer, and this was the way forward. According to the government person who was there at the time, this was the way forward. 2 questions, we'll get them answered, blah blah blah. And then I was stopped in the street one day by a government person, and he turned around and told me, did you get the response for Perth and Kinross? And I went like, no. He says, well, they've responded to you. And I went home that day and took out this document, sent to me by Perth and Kinross Council, to find the 8 questions that had been asked of them. There was no answer. Nothing.
8 non-answers.
8 non-answers. They never answered not one of my questions, as I says. But we knew they had that these files they had seen all the time. They knew what had happened to John all the time. And this is where the dirt starts. So,
just before we get into the dirt, and that's coming, they're still doing regular checkups on you as a guardian. So we're now in July 2011, Hell and Winter, the annual review for John. Over the last year, Mr. Shields has had support from a range of professionals to ensure that John is given opportunities to develop. Speech therapist is providing guidance on developing a communication system which will suit John. This has been taken on by the personal assistants. John has been in contact with a dietitian, weight still being an issue, who has put guidelines in place for a healthy eating programme. John will lose weight gradually by following the guidelines and increasing the amount of exercise he has. John continues to have regular contact with his mother and sister. The arrangements for visits appears to be running smoothly. Mr. Shields is concerning Mr. Shields is concerned that he gets no feedback from visits as to John's activities or diets over the weekends he is away. Mr. Shields has arranged for holidays for John and takes time to visit and risk assess all the proposed venues for these holidays. John is supported to ensure he has contact with those who are important to him. He visits his mother and sister every 3 weeks and spends a weekend. John is assisted to access a wide range of community activities. He's going swimming, walking, and has a range of other activities which are planned in advance. All activities and holidays are risk assessed before John participates. Mr. Shields takes his role as welfare guardian as a serious responsibility and tries to ensure that John's safety and well-being are kept in mind when planning daily programmes. Everyone present is satisfied with the current arrangements in place for John. A copy of the review will be sent to John's mother, which it was. So that's 2011. Gold star, well done. Couldn't do better. I mean, that's as glowing as it's possible to be. 2011, your wife, ex-wife, Catherine McJimsey, John's mother, writes to Helen Winter. It's a bit less enthusiastic. It's an odd letter. I'll give you a couple of quotes and maybe you can explain where you think this is coming from. She writes, in terms of the third point regarding continuity of the care plan, the only point I would advise is that John's care plan does not seem to extend to when he is in Glasgow. Although my daughter had advocated for hours to be allocated when John is away from his dad's, are they asking for the carers to be sent to Glasgow as well for the weekends he's away? Yeah,
it became unworkable with the demands that was getting put on. Not me, because I'm not allowed to make that decision. These are decisions that's put forward to the local authorities. But the problem is like John's care package is made up in where he lives. You know what I mean? They're a second because he's only going for a visit. He's only there for a certain couple of days visit, but his life is in Blairgowrie.
Yes.
The whole package must be based on what John does round about Blairgowrie. You know, like...
And at the weekends he's with you and Janice.
Well, he's with me and Janice, he's out all the time. As I said, me and John, as I said, he had a great life, John. John's life was great. You know, he loves football. And we were season ticket holders at Ibrox, so we used to go and watch Rangers. And we used to travel all over the place to watch Rangers. He was also part of a local football team. He was one of their supporters and they loved John being there. Everybody would come up and speak to him. You know, John just loved the life. He had a great life. And this was what the idea what this package is for. You know, for my daughter and my ex-wife started asking, they wanted routines that they could do down there on the basis of 2 days. Just a 2-day visit. Mm-hmm. He leaves my place on a Friday afternoon, he's down there for tea time. Whatever they done on Friday night, Saturday and Sunday, that was just part of a visitation. They started to want demands.
Yeah. Also in the letter, she writes, I have no objections to completing a single sheet, one sheet, about John's diet, sleep and activities. Myself and my daughter, who is a clinical psychologist and therefore trained to work with people with learning disabilities, would also like to suggest that information about general mood and behaviours was recorded also. I would like, for example, to note information about specific behaviours, which are particularly strong communications. Times such when John has removed his bag from the hall and put it back in his room upon being told he's going home are potentially meaningful communications which should be heard. So this is your wife and your daughter saying, it's us he really needs.
Yeah, it was just part of a game, and it was a build-up to a game that was getting played. Because eventually, you know, as we talk about that, this came to a head, a big head. But what you had is you had a mother and a daughter who were starting to put rules and regulations down. Even though I was guardian, it wasn't run by me. It was run through the social work. Now even the social work wouldn't interfere in anything that they're talking about. There was no way they were going to do any more than what they were doing. You know, like John, you know, these mood swings, like John never really had mood swings, you know, as such, or he was changing from day to day. You know, these would be recorded with me. You know, and us to turn around and say, when I lifted his bag, to tell you as if he was going home, and he would go and take the bag and put it back in the room. That was rubbish. John was as happy whether he was going down to his mother's or whether he's coming home from his mother's. There was never ever any fight. And to make a statement like that was to make me look as though John didn't want to live with me. And that's based on 2 days every 3 weeks that they're hitting this. Yeah. But as I say to you, this was just the start.
So we'll come back to, as you say, there's much more to come on that. You're continuing to, during this period, to correspond with the police. So November 2012, there's a letter on file from Detective Inspector James McEnany. Okay. Farmer Protection Unit, Saracen Police Office. He's saying there was an original investigation in August 2000 into the abuse of John Jr. in the Mallard, conducted by DS Wiggins, who is now retired. It also references a 2007 review of the original inquiry under D.I.T. Docherty, who is also now retired. This review found it difficult to locate the original paperwork. Contact was made with the Mallard, but, quote here, unfortunately the paperwork previously held by them has been destroyed. So that is 2012, about a year after you received all of the paperwork onto your living room floor. The police are telling you that the Mallard are telling them everything's destroyed. Yeah. That's very odd. Yeah, well, it was a strange. We met these two police officers for Posso, and they come up to our local MSP's office, and we sat there and we were told there was going to be an investigation carried out by them into John. Now, if you know Posso's in the area where John's home was. The Mallard was up in Springburn, and that's why these officers were appointed. As I said, they did, when they turned round at the meeting, this was another thing, I'm sitting with all these files, knowing that I've got all these files, and here's two officers sitting, and both of them are denying that anything exists. Yeah. I said, but what I don't understand is like, surely they must have been informed by the courts that all documentation had to be handed over to me. They must have known this. So this to this day is why they want to know who gave me the files, because it kind of puts him and the rest of his comrades or whatever, you know, in a sticky position. Yeah. Because they're stating these files that were delivered to me do not exist. Well, D.I. McEnany, Strathclyde Police, here's a copy of the letter, continues, in relation to your request for copy police reports, so you were asking for, let me see what you've got. I regret to inform you, right, so I regret to inform you that I've carried out a search of both paper and electronic files, and it would appear that all paperwork in relation to your son's case has been destroyed. So, in 2009, they're saying there's nothing. The file's been completely wiped. Police Scotland have nothing. Very interesting. Partly because later on we got information that said something else. This is an ongoing problem. Where are the records? What are the records? What are held? The witnesses would not agree together, right? There's everything that you're being told by one organisation is later contradicted either by another organisation or by the same organisation at a later date. this is why you're saying it looks like a cover-up, yeah?
Well, see, when you're in Scotland, they've got these authorities who deal with these situations, you know, like Care Commission, Mental Welfare Commission, and then you've got Police Scotland, and then you get other agencies above that. Once you start delving in, dealing with local authorities, the reaction you get is completely different from what you get when you're dealing with the Care Commission and the Mental Welfare Commission. One thing I've always stated is, in this country of ours, Scotland, it is the local authorities who make the decisions. They rule. They make the decisions whether you know or whether you're going to get told. You know, and what I found is, like, dealing with well, North Lanarkshire has always been rated as one of the biggest in the country, and then you get Perth and Kinross, another big council. When the two of them go together, you're taking on one big authority. Now, the strangest thing is I've explained to you there and now, is you've got North Lanarkshire Council covered up the abuse, covered up the files, dictated they don't exist. It didn't matter what you done. I was in so many social work offices in Coatbridge and Motherwell trying to get documentation of my son, to be told there is none. It's been destroyed. You know, when you go back to what happened in North Lanarkshire, there's a committee review. I never heard the word his files have been destroyed when we were sitting in a committee review trying to find out before I left Moodiesburn. You know what I mean? You never heard nothing about files being destroyed. So where were these files? And it's always been the point, I've always said this, the local authorities knew exactly where these files were. And they went out their way to cover up. And then you've got Police Scotland come on the scene. As I said, they were on 2000, we went through what happened in 2000, 2007, that's very true what you stated there. I had two police officers up in Blairgowrie, sat with us in office, and they promised us the world. They promised, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll find this, don't worry about it, we'll find it, and then boom, look what happened. Yeah. Everyone was destroyed.
So 2000, investigation got nowhere, orchestrated responses was the conclusion. 2007, got nowhere, there are no records, but there's more, and we'll come to the more in a minute. Another slight diversion, but this is relevant for the story to shortly unfold. June 2013 we're up to now. PAMIS file note. Now, PAMIS is promoting a more inclusive society, it stands for. Tell us what, firstly, this is a note by Maureen Phillips of PAMIS. What sort of organisation is PAMIS?
PAMIS are a great organisation. I get none, but you know, they help me. They come aboard. Maureen Phillips, beautiful woman. She was a coordinator for PAMIS, and she done my area. As I said, she helped me through. So her help got me into doing the Spain Scottish personal assistance. It was because she says you'd be good for that job, and I went for it. As I says, and this organisation, what they do is they have days out. They have, they help the adults like John things to do. As I said, it's not like getting them work or anything like that. It's just they have days, other families, you get to meet other families, you see their problems. And sometimes that happened, I would look at it and go like that, God, I'm lucky. I know, I take my son to football. He was part of a football club, Flynn Rangers Supporters Club. They loved my son. You know, these were things I got John involved in as well, you know. And you had all these issues going on and outside, but then I got a life for John outside of that. As I said, going to football was his love. Maureen Phillips was just one of these ladies who came on board. She made the decision. She was somebody you could go back to if you had a problem. You phoned her up and Maureen was there in a minute to sort the problems, especially care provision, especially carers, especially putting together life for John, issues for John. She knew John loved going to football. She loved, because she used to read the reports. She knew what was happening. I says, and that was her job, PAMIS. And as I says, I recommend PAMIS to anybody with severe learning disabilities.
So this is a report by her. So she had a meeting with two of the carers, Debbie Pert and Ashley McCann, who had reported the third carer as being inappropriately rough with John. And it's relatively minor stuff, but it's pushing, it's John hit her, she hit him back, being grumpy, being shouty and aggressive and upsetting him, and then John reacts and just generally not handling the situation well. So she concludes, in my discussion with Jill, she spoke openly about her approach to John and genuinely appeared to be unaware how her approach to John was being perceived by the other carers. She agreed that training on the communication and behaviour support would help her improve her practice and was willing to undertake any training required to improve her practice. So these two carers, Debbie and Ashley, have gone to Maureen Phillips of Pamis to report a problem. Maureen Phillips has investigated, come up with a range of pieces of advice. She advised you to contact Spain. All staff could attend an understanding positive behaviour workshop, training on communications, seek advice from Spain on protocols to assist everyone being clearer about the roles and responsibilities. Adult support and protection policies and procedures were discussed, and the procedure highlighted to everyone if they saw anything untoward or that made them uncomfortable, who they should report to. Right? So these two carers went through that process about a third carer. However, subsequently you decided to let the third carer go. The following Monday, 10th of June, Mr. Shields called to say he'd spoken to Jill and she would no longer be employed by him. So you decided that it wasn't fixable. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, we asked for a meeting for her because there was a lot of things coming back to us at the time. This is a bit about when you've got people living in your house, eating in your house, living with your son, doing things when you're no in. We were finding out that this carer had been stealing food, stealing drink.
Okay.
Right, and the decision then had to be made. I couldn't have her living in my house anymore after what she had done. She actually sat with me and Maureen Phillips when Maureen done the interview, and my position in the interview was to sit there and say nothing. But you will be a witness to what this carer says, and she came out and she'd assaulted John on 3 separate occasions, which is serious enough. But we thought, what do we do here? Do we go to the local authority or do we go to the police to be reported? I said I didn't know what to do at that stage, and my decision was, like, she's got to go. Get her out of the house and then let the local authorities deal with her themselves. I couldn't have her working in my house anymore.
Right, okay. Now this brings us to, we're into January 2014. We're back to Police Scotland, right? More Police Scotland. John Shields Senior and Janice have a meeting with Yvonne Scott and Mark Nelson of Police Scotland. Mark Nelson states this is the third and currently ongoing police investigation looking into possible criminality in relation to 4 specific incidents of bruising to John Jr. John, you state that you and Janice have never been told anything about anything of the details of the previous 2 investigations. Mark Nelson records that, quote, I have got records from the Mallard, a day-to-day record of John Jr.'s daily log. So this is presumably the documents that were meant to be destroyed. Interesting, but he's got them. He further stated that having spoken to various professionals, there was nothing to suggest that John Jr. had suffered abuse or neglect at the Mallard. We've been through this many times, but essentially this ignores the evidence of the bruising in around the anus and genitals, the evidence of the behavioural changes. It ignores all the evidence. So, ignoring all the evidence, there's nothing to suggest, right? He said there is nothing to suggest that John Jr. has suffered abuse or neglect. I find that just an outrageous statement, but that's the one that's been made. John, you said you expected that police the police would conclude this, but you disagreed. You wanted to know why a third police investigation had not looked into the report that you'd given to Mark Nelson a year ago, which described the assaults on the other children at the Mallard. You said, quote, "The report states my son's team leader was caught assaulting 3 other children in the home, and the Church of Scotland moved him to a home for adults. They then brought him back again, and then my son went through the worst time he'd ever had." So you raised all of this, and this was all news to Mark Nelson. So Yvonne Scott said she was horrified by what she described as a series of smoke screens with paperwork not being properly done or going missing. So there's some anxiety on the part of the police, but it's not really very clear, and they're basically still saying we're not saying anything criminal happened. So you're still pursuing the police angle, but you're not getting very far. We've now got, let's see, we're on the 5th of March 2014. So this is another review by Perth and Kinross Council, essentially of how things are going with your guardianship, with the welfare guardianship, how John's getting on. So they write, regular team meetings take place to allow for information to be shared. There's a surplus of funds in the allocated direct payment budget. So there's, in terms of organisational and financial matters, they seem happy. They write, John continues to access a wide range of activities in the community. He enjoys swimming, going for walks, trips to the theatre, days out, and is constantly kept busy. When in the home, he watches television, DVDs, listens to music, and uses his treadmill. John has started to go shopping with his personal assistants and is doing more around the home. John continues to lose weight, weight being a constant issue, and is following a healthy diet to try and reduce his weight further. Discussion occurs relating to John's planned holiday with his mother. Mr. Shields is unhappy that no plans have been made, as he'd understood that there was an agreement that this would be made at the previous meeting. He is keen for dates to be confirmed to allow the PAs to make plans for their annual leave. He may seek legal advice on the matter. Mr. and Mrs. Shields continue to support John at home and also take him out to specific events. John loves going to football with his dad. John's general health has been good with only minor ailments. His seizures are controlled well with medication. He continues to have regular dental appointments, no problems with teeth, regular dental appointments. He continues to lose weight, which is helped by increased activity. He's very active every day. He joins in a wide range of different community-based activities and pastimes within his home. John loves walking. He's able to walk long distances. He also enjoys using the treadmill at home. He likes to go swimming, to the cinema, to the pub. He likes to go to the theatre. He's a better life than I had. He likes to go to the theatre, travel by train to Glasgow to see shows, attends football matches with his dad. It's something he does on a regular basis and enjoys. He loves music and watching DVDs and television programmes. He enjoys going out into the community. Mr. Shields advised is well known in the local area. They write also, John has to have support at all times as he cannot be left alone. So again, so this is, just to be clear, this is the 5th of March 2014. John is thriving. He's never off the street. He's constantly busy. He's got many, many activities. He's integrated well with the community. Everything's fine. That was what I read in the report. Was that how they came across to you? Yeah,
well, Jess Taylor was the social worker that eventually was appointed to come on board, and she was a young lassie, and she seemed to be pretty good.
This was replacing Gillian Morrison?
Yeah, when we didn't take Gillian Morrison on,
yeah,
we took Jess Taylor on. Jess Taylor came out, done a review, was happy with everything she's seen, knew that, you know, we were progressing well. John was, as you've read there, John was doing well across the board. He had a great life, as you said, he had a better life than me. And that was the good thing about it, was everything seemed to be fine. Then the report was done, she asked me to sign it, I signed it, and away she went. And then after that, all hell erupted.
We'll get to hell shortly.
Yeah.
Now, as this is going on, you're still chasing for information. We have here a response, a letter from Raymond Taylor, Community Social Work Manager at North Lanarkshire Council. So this is you chasing information about what happened back in 1999 and before. He says, I'm writing further to our telephone conversations over the past few weeks concerning your belief that North Lanarkshire Council has deliberately withheld information contained within our records concerning your son. So this is a very clear allegation that they've got information in the records and they are hiding it. Okay. His response, firstly, next paragraph, quote, as you're aware, Police Scotland are carrying out an investigation, so 2014 investigation is ongoing, about allegations which you have made concerning John's care whilst residing at the Mallard, a residential facility operated by Crossreach in the mid-1990s. Please note that all of our care records have been made available to Police Scotland to assist them with their investigation. So they're giving them to Police Scotland. Next paragraph. I have also had an opportunity to examine John's care records and to view the information which has been made available to you. Whilst it is the case that some information was either withheld or redacted, the reason for this was the local authority was unable to gain consent to the release of third-party information under the provisions of the Data Protection Act. It is for this reason that we were legally unable to pass copies of this information to you. I should add that the letter from the Ombudsman's Office, a copy of which I attach, indicates that these allegations have been considered previously and clarification on these matters has been issued. I realise you'll be disappointed by this response. In order to help resolve and clarify any outstanding matters, I would suggest that you provide me with details of dates of reports, letters, etc., which you now hold and which you consider social work has not previously provided to you. This would allow assessment as to whether or not the material you hold has previously been issued to you, or alternatively to inform an explanation for refusing its release. Now, this is fascinating. So, you've gone to North Lanarkshire Council and said you're holding back information. They've come back and they've said, yes, we are. We're holding back information. Okay? Then they say, oh, data protection, which we've heard before, which I consider to be an affront to justice, trying to use data protection to hold back information on this subject. You don't use data protection to cover up criminality. It's a nonsense. And third party, who are these third parties? Right? Is it the people who neglected to protect John when he was in the Mallard? Maybe. And he then has the brass neck to say, but I understand now that you've got some information. So you tell me what you've got, and I'll then formulate a reason why that's to explain what we then did. Now, this is the way that liars operate, right? People who are looking to deceive, they want a narrative, and they want to have a bit of truth in there, and they want to spin it, and they want to leave out certain facts, and they might say an out-and-out lie now and again, but in order to do so, they need to know what the victim of the lies knows. They need to know what you know. And they're actually writing and asking you, give us a list of all the documents you think we've withheld, and then we'll come up with a story about why we withheld them. That's ridiculous.
Well, see, what you've got to remember is, in 2011, when I took this council to court, they were issued an interlocutor telling them, hand over all documentation that you possess to me because of my part as being a guardian. They had to give me they gave me nothing. Now he's sitting here 3 years later telling you that he handed over documentation to Police Scotland, but Police Scotland are saying they don't have any documents. You know, when I question them on the documents...
Yes, of course. This is concerning information that there was an interlocutor instructing him to release.
Yeah, but they're not doing it, and they never done it. And yet here he is, he's sitting here, he's telling you, Police Scotland have came in here and taken documentation away. I actually questioned saying, What documentation did they take away? What did you no give me? You got to remember, they're not even acknowledging the file that was sent to me. So I don't really know what documentation he actually gave to Police Scotland. We never ever found out anyway, because the chief inspector who was investigating it, she actually gave up, passed it on to another copper, so I'm dealing with another police officer. Her name was McGregor, Sharon McGregor, she was a police officer, and her job was to investigate everything that this Yvonne Scott had done, but to send me a reply. And when the reply came from her, which was in June 2014, that was the same rubbish that I'd been getting all the time. There is no documentation, nothing's there.
We're just getting to that. So, 17th of April 2014, your solicitor, Jamie Baxter, writes to police standards. We would like to advise that above named client you wishes to make a complaint against Strathclyde Police relating to their ongoing failures to carry out a proper and full investigation into the alleged assault and maltreatment of Mr Shields' son, John William Shields. The letter continues from Jamie Baxter. Following repeated queries as to progress, Mr Shields and his wife attended a further meeting with Police Scotland in January 2014, at which time they were informed that the documentation they had provided had not been read and potential witnesses they had identified had not yet been interviewed. Mr and Mrs Shields were informed that steps would now be taken to ensure there was no delay in a full investigation being carried out. So they're accepting that they're not really delivering anything that looks like a full investigation. We understand that Mr Shields has heard nothing further from Police Scotland regarding this matter. The incident complained of relates to sexual abuse of a vulnerable adult with special needs. Mr Shields' son is not able to make a complaint on his own behalf. Professional Standards wrote back to your solicitor, and as I refer to your recent letter on behalf of the above named clients intimating a complaint about the police. This matter has been recorded, and the officer appointed to investigate the complaint will contact you and your clients in the near future to discuss concerns in greater detail. So we've then got 26th of June 2014. Jamie Baxter, John Shields' solicitor, to Detective Sergeant Peter McPike, Police Scotland. We would be obliged if you would clarify precisely what your role will be in dealing with this complaint. We understand from our clients that they were previously advised you would be in charge of dealing with the investigation into the alleged assault and maltreatment of the client's son whilst he was residing at the Mallard. We further understand that you attended a meeting which our clients had with Police Scotland and London Road Police Office in 2014, the January 17, 2014 meeting, since which time our clients were not aware of any progress having been made. We accordingly are concerned that there may well be a conflict in view of what we understand was your previous involvement in dealing with the investigation, in you being in charge of the complaint against Strathclyde Police and Police Scotland. So they put in charge of investigating your complaint against Police Scotland one of the officers who was in charge of the original investigation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right, okay, so DS Peter McPike, Public Protection Unit, replies, I can confirm that I had no direct involvement in the previous investigations. I did, however, have direct line management responsibility.
That don't mean the same.
Right, that's incredible as well. I wasn't involved, I just had direct line management responsibility for the policeman who was involved. Okay. I also attended the meeting on the 17th of January at the request of the officer, DCI Scott. My attendance at that meeting was merely in an effort to provide any further assistance if that was necessary. For the avoidance of doubt, I also have direct line management responsibility for Detective Chief Inspector McGregor, who is now investigating your client's complaint.
The same man looking after everything. This McPike, on the 17th of January, I've got to state, like, when we were having the meeting in Police Scotland, he sat in the corner of a room, well away from the meeting table, And when you go to these meetings, everybody says who they are. They all announce, I'm John Shields, I'm Janice Shields, I'm my sister, Kay Forrest. Everybody came out and gave who they were. He didn't. He didn't even state who the hell he was. You know, he's been investigating as an online manager, whatever, during an investigation. He still never even told us what his involvement. The only thing he ever done was, there was documentation there which kind of upset him because it was proof that they hadn't done their job right. And as he was walking out the office, to be honest with you, he tried to pick it up. He tried to put his hand down to pick his, and I went like, oh, what are you doing? I said, oh, I was just going to take that and photocopy it. I says, no, you don't know. I says, I'll photocopy it for you if you need a copy of it. You don't take it away. I says, who are you? And that was it. He just walked away right out the door.
So here we got 25th July 2014. 1 week later. DCI Sharon McGregor, Public Protection Unit, writes to you, they've had a thorough review. I conclude that a full investigation, so a full and proper investigation, under the direction of a detective inspector has been undertaken from January 2013 and has only just been concluded.
A year and a half. In
May 2014. So that alone says that from the abuse taking place in 1995, we're now in 2014, and Police Scotland are now saying that they've completed a full and thorough investigation. It is concluded that there's no evidence that your son, John Shields Jr., was the subject of any assault or victim of any criminality. No evidence. Not insufficient evidence to identify a perpetrator. No evidence. 162 pages of bruising charts. No evidence. Right? Bruising to his genitals. No evidence. Major behavioural changes. No evidence. Report from clinical psychologists saying it was sexual abuse. No evidence. Right? Not insufficient evidence. Not insufficient evidence to identify a perpetrator. No evidence. That's what they've concluded.
You've got to remember what they missed out as well, was the fact that he fell off a bike and the handlebar went right up his anus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To actually...
All these weird stories and explanations of why he was bruised that made no sense. No evidence. The bruising, no evidence. So, after a thorough investigation, because it must have been thorough because it lasted for nearly 20 years,
yeah.
That's what they concluded, no evidence. It is my determination that your complaint that Strathclyde Police and Police Scotland have neglected their duty by failing to investigate the allegation of assault on your son is not upheld. Even that's strange because they've only just completed it in 2014 for an assault that took place in 1995. So, you have, before we get to the last bit here, in summary, we've gone from 2002 through to 2014. For 12 years, what we see in the file is you're administering the financial guardianship of your son's interests without any complaint. Every year that's a yes, we've signed off on that, we're totally happy. You have looked after his welfare and the reports are glowing, right? He's got a great life. You're being careful, you're risk assessing, you're interested in his best interests, and everything's fine. There was a problem with one carer, you dismissed the carer. You have fought for and won better financial remuneration for all the carers in Perth and Kinross Council because you felt that the job they were being asked to do was not a minimum wage job. And you have consistently searched for, fought for information and a proper investigation into the abuse that John suffered for 12 years, unrelentingly. You have shown that the official records are all over the place, the official stories all over the place. You have received records you were told were destroyed, you've now got. And they're still saying, there's nothing to see, this is not the crime you're looking for. Right? And 12 years on, you're not giving up. So, 1 month later, on Monday the 25th, August 2014, Shirley Douglas, social worker, Perth and Kinross Council, came to your residence with 2 police officers. She said that reports have been made concerning assaults by you on your son, and that Perth and Kinross Council were applying for a removal order to Perth Sheriff Court that afternoon. She said that John Shields Jr. would remain with his mother, where he'd been visiting over the weekend, and would not be returned to you. And down they go to the court. And after a lot of struggle, we got the records. Summary application under the Adult Support and Protection Scotland Act 2007, Section 14, dated 25th August 2014. Applicant Perth and Kinross Council respectfully craves the court to grant an removal order in terms of Section 14 of the Adult Support and Protection Scotland Act, authorising a council officer or any council nominee to move the adult from the place where he is residing to an address which I won't read out in Glasgow, which will be your ex-wife's home, I imagine. Yeah. The council to take such reasonable steps as it thinks fit for the purpose of protecting the adult from harm. And in explaining why this is necessary, they write, the adult was accompanied by one of his personal assistants. To hand over, the personal assistant advised the adult's sister, your daughter Jennifer, that she and a colleague had witnessed the adult's father physically abuse the adult. The adult's sister transported the adult to his mother's home in Glasgow, then contacted the applicants out of our social work team to report the allegation. So this all happened over the weekend. Police Scotland interviewed, oh, they're quick now, that weekend. Police Scotland interviewed 2 personal assistants who both provided corroborating statements which alleged that the adult's father physically abused the adult on 3 separate occasions. Namely, the 22nd of August, the previous Friday, 2014, you, John Shields Sr., bought the adult jeans for his birthday and wanted him to wear the jeans. John Shields Sr. made the adult put the jeans on, and it was clear the adult was uncomfortable wearing the jeans. That. Okay. Friday, 25th July, John Shields Sr. told the adult he wanted him to go into the shower. The adult was not moving quickly enough for his father's liking, and John Shields Sr. slapped the adult 4 times on the stomach. I know that there's an explanation for this, and I think if you could just explain what happened there briefly.
Yeah.
We'll come back to this in more detail later, but just briefly, what was the story there?
John had just come back from a holiday and he needed the toilet in a hurry. Come in and the 2 carers come in and John just headed for the toilet, and I said, well, I'll get him in there. So I got him into the toilet, and the 2 carers were outside. They'd been away on holiday for a week. I says to him, what he does, put his dirty clothes in the basket. I says, and you get yourself away home. I'll shower John and that. So John's standing down the toilet, and I turned round to my wife Janice and I went like that. I said, look at the weight that he's put on. I says, what, he must have put a bit of stone on in a week. His stomach was out. So what I done was patted his stomach 4 times, and I says to him, God, you put on some amount of weight, son. And as I said, that was it.
Right. Criminalising normal family life. On Monday the 4th of August, John Shields Sr. had been in the living room reading a report which had been written by the adult's mother, which stated he had been suffering from sore teeth. You were unhappy with this report and stormed into the adult's bedroom, went into the bedroom and grabbed a toothbrush before returning went into the bathroom, grabbed a toothbrush before returning to the bedroom, forcibly pulling the adult's head back and brushing his teeth, whilst informing the personal assistants that the adult's teeth were in working order. Working order. Okay. Right. So, this one later on was abandoned by everybody because what this was actually was best practice in dealing with someone like John and brushing his teeth, right? So, what they said is you brought him jeans which made him feel uncomfortable, you patted him on the stomach when he put on a stone, and you brushed his teeth. Those are the allegations. Police Scotland have dropped everything and investigated this over the weekend, and here we have Perth and Kinross Council concluding, I continue from the original documentation, they say, it appears that the adult is likely to be seriously harmed if he remains in the care of his father. The adult has been assaulted on 3 separate occasions by his father. The presence of witnesses did not deter the adult's father from physically assaulting the adult and treating him in a demeaning and abusive manner. Pleas in law. The applicant, having reasonable cause to suspect that the respondent is an adult at risk who is being, or is likely to be, seriously harmed, if not moved to another place, and there being an available and suitable place to which the adult could be moved, the order should be granted as craved. Sheriff Fowlis, on that Monday, 25th of August, Sheriff, having seen and considered the application, heard the agent for the applicant refuses said application. Sheriff Fowlis was of the view that the evidence did not meet the threshold of serious harm, so he could not grant the order. So they went and said he bought him jeans, he patted him on the stomach when he put him on a stone, and he brushed his teeth, and we want him removed because he's at risk of serious harm. And the Sheriff Fowlis and Perth and Kinross Sheriff Court said no.
That's correct.
5 p.m. Shirley Douglas, social worker, Perth and Kinross Council, telephoned John Shields Sr. to inform him that John Jr. was being returned to his care that evening. How did that phone call go?
What happened was when she came to the door in the morning, and she just got tore out. She tore in. I had no clue what was getting hit with, like assaults, this, that, and the next thing. And then when she was threatening me about the court in the afternoon.
Sorry, John, I should have actually started that. Yeah, I skirted over this because this actually makes me quite angry, right? So I rushed over that. I apologise. Yeah. So firstly, they turn up at your door with 2 police officers. Right. 2 police officers, presumably because what, to protect the social worker from you.
No, that's what it was, is to protect her from me, because somehow I'd been classed as a violent man. Also, weirdest thing was one of the police officers was a mate of mine, and when he clocked my house, knew that she was coming to see me, he actually turned around and says to her, "What is this?" He would never hurt his son, you know what I mean? And this social worker, believe it or not, when she found out that the police officer knew me, she asked him if he knew any dirt on me. And I could not believe it. I met him later on and I talked to him about it, and he actually says that to me. He was no longer a serving police officer, but he said, by the way, she was asking me for dirt on you at that time when you were there, because he'd asked her, why don't you tell him what he's supposedly done? You know, if he's assaulted his kid, what has he supposedly done? You've just walked up, says, reports of assault, your son's gone to court, and if you get away with it, you'll never see your son again. That is what she said. And when later on...
She actually said? Can you remember exactly what she said? Yeah,
that was it. She phoned me up at that time. Sorry, she didn't phone me. She says to me at the door, we're going to court this afternoon for an order. And I'm like, what for? To take John away for you. I says, how have I done? All the assaults. Many a lot, you'll never get to see your boy again. That was her words to me.
Okay.
That was 3 o'clock that they went to court. 3 o'clock they get knocked back. The judge threw them out. For what I heard was he just refused it all and told her, get the boy back to his father. He's not done anything wrong. And she had to phone me. So she phoned me at 5 o'clock, and she came on the phone and she went like that, Shirley Douglas here, Perth and Kinross Social Work Department, Been to court today, we were refused, so you're getting your son back. Boom.
Okay, so
That was that.
okay, not happy.
No, she wasn't happy, Sharpie.
Not happy. Right. Okay. And all of the 12 years of glowing reports about how much you care for your son, those were all.
That didn't mean anything.
Those were all forgotten. Okay. Okay. On the Wednesday, the following Wednesday, 2 social workers from Perth and Ross Council, Anne Prentice and Dina Scott, visited your home, met you and your wife, Janice. They saw John Jr., commented how happy he was, and discussed all manner of care and finance he could offer to help his care in your custody. Anne Prentice had been made John Jr.'s social worker that day. Well, how did that meeting go?
It was fine. She came out and she says, this is Anne. Dana Scott, she was the finance woman in Perth and Ross Council. She was the one I dealt with John's monies. So she came out and she came to my house. You got to remember, it was a lovely house I stayed in Blair. She came into my house, kind of taken aback. It wasn't what she expected. I think she thought I stayed in a slum or something like that. It was just the attitude, it wasn't the same, offer when she came in. She didn't. She actually passed comment, I didn't know you had this, I didn't know you do that. At the end of the day, she was shown a computer with all John's details on it, everything to do with John, everything had done John. She was kind of taken aback. It was on Anne Prentice, she was there. And the next minute, everything seemed to be fine. And these two had come all the way. The weirdest thing is, they never mentioned what had happened on the Monday. They hadn't mentioned anything about the courts trying to going to court trying to take John away from me. These 2 social workers sitting there, and I don't know, maybe it's because they didn't succeed, that they wanted to make things look good, and well, we're helping them, we're going to help them. She sat down and they talked about getting a care package together, again, hiring people, blah, blah, blah. This is what they said that day in the Wednesday afternoon. So we thought we were getting places. John was there, he was jumping about as usual, happy as Larry, and they were like, oh, look at John, he's so happy, isn't he, blah, blah. This is the same boy that we're trying to take out of me on the Monday. So,
Monday, you're a bad man, and if we get our way, with any luck, you'll never see your son again. Wednesday, everything garden's rosy. We can't help you enough. Thursday, 28th of August 2014, Thursday, 9:30 a.m. 3 police officers arrive at the home of John Shields and his wife Janice and John Jr. They detain John Shields Sr. under Section 14 of the Criminal Procedure Scotland Act 1995. John Shields Sr. was taken to Perth Police Station for questioning regarding the same 3 alleged assaults that were brought by Perth and Ross Council 3 days previously and dismissed by Sheriff Fowlis. John Shields was under arrest, taken out of his home, and that's where we're going to leave this story today. And next week's episode is called Fitted Up. John, thank you very much.
Thanks again, David.